Hey everyone, I'm hiding right now because, as you saw in my last video, my home was invaded by a creature most vile. The creature, as you know by now, has something to do with the lovely Phoebe Cates. I'm sure you can guess what it is. Oh man, what an ugly ass thing. Oh no. I think I've been found. Angry Kevin Klein! Story time, boys and girls. This one's called The Ridiculously Hot 80s Chick Who Escaped from the Gremlins. Once upon a time, there were some gremlins who hatched from their cocoons. And it looks like all that eating after midnight gave them some bad gas. Whew! I'd be all pissed off if I was stuck in a cocoon with my farts all night too. Before anything else happened, Billy and Gizmo decided to pose for a male model photo shoot. And then they followed Stripe's tracks to the gymnasium. Peekaboo! said Stripe. And then he jumped in... No, wait a minute. What the fuck? Look at that. They pushed him in. You fucking dumbasses, you've doomed us all. Why would you push him in the pool? And then Stripe began to multiply. And well, looks like Michael Jackson might have made an appearance or something. I can't tell. So then Billy and Gizmo went to their local army recruiter station. And then the wizard wriggled his spirit fingers and magically made the envelopes fly out of the mailbox. And this gremlin caused a car accident. And Stripe looked pretty badass on a Christmas wreath. And they fucking bulldozed through this house. And then in a scene that was supposed to take place in the bar, it looks like this gremlin is trying to show this little boy his nads. While the other little boy, who was a gremlin, ran away to tell his mom. And now we get to the good part of the story. The ridiculously hot 80s chick. Here she is lighting Stripe's cigar. And here's the gremlins drinking and playing pool, while Stripe tries to do his best 80s kind of guy impression. And I think here's the photo shoot that Billy and Gizmo were trying to pose for earlier. Dumb fucks didn't even know where to go. Damn, she's hot. And after the photo shoot was over, the hot chick went home with... The fuck, is that her dad? And so Billy decided to take on a modeling gig with a new, hotter partner, while his old one photo-bombed the fuck out of them. The end. Wow. What a shitty story. And look at that, it was released the same year that the Gremlins movie was. Interesting. So, think I'm kind of breaking the rules here. I mean, I got Gremlins versus Gremlins, but they're both from the 80s. Normally I compare things from the 80s to different decades. Did the 80s just kind of beat itself?
I'm kicking my ass, do you mind?
No, this doesn't really count. Obviously it's not a fair comparison. Now there are a lot of good books that get turned into movies that aren't as good as the book. But, you know, this wasn't really a fair fight. You can't compare a movie to a book that's the adaptation of the movie, especially one like this. I mean, look, Story 3, there were 5 books. This is only 16 pages. This only covered so much of the movie, and it didn't cover it well. How could it in 16 pages? What we're here to talk about is 1984's Gremlins versus 1990's Gremlins 2, The New Batch. Now, before I get to ranting here, I want everyone to understand that this is a first for me in one of these videos, because unlike the new He-Man and unlike the new Thundercats, complete with the Pikachu-ish snarf, I like Gremlins 2. And I'll tell you why. Aside from the fact that it's still Gremlins, and once again, it has Phoebe Cates.
She's a babe!
Gremlins 2 does a lot of things that most sequels don't do. A lot of sequels take a lot of flack because either they just go so far from the original story they completely suck, or they kind of, you know, producers get lazy and they just say, okay, they love that movie so much, let's basically just rehash the movie, change 1 or 2 things here and there, and let's just give them the same movie again, basically. Don't further the storyline in any way, shape, or form. Gremlins 2, however, seemed very, very meticulous in doing just the opposite. Billy and Kate had moved away from Kingston Falls to New York City. If you remember how the original Gremlins ended, they made it seem like, they kind of left it open, but they made it seem like, you know, Billy could never have Gizmo again. Moving the story along, Gremlins 2, old man dies. Simple enough, very realistic. And Billy and Kate work in a building, huge multi-purpose building that has a laboratory that experiments on animals and all kinds of weird creatures, to include in this case Mogwai. So they also, along with freeing Gizmo to be able to reunite with Billy, they also put in a plausible plot that explains Billy and Gizmo's reuniting. Now we get to the good stuff. Again, they didn't just rehash the same old thing. It wasn't simply, oh, okay, this movie's predictable, Mogwai gets wet, evil Mogwai siblings, Mogwais eat after midnight, they turn into gremlins, fight is on, gotta get rid of all the gremlins. It wasn't that simple. In the original Gremlins, the Mogwai were under Billy's supervision, and they actually tricked Billy into feeding them after midnight. Gremlins 2 decided to mix that up, however. They made a scenario where Gizmo got wet, and there was no human supervision. So immediately, Gizmo's new brothers turned on him. And they didn't have to trick anyone. And another thing that right away I enjoyed, because I am a huge fan of Stripe, the leader of the original Gremlins. Gremlins 2 let me know right away, we respect Stripe. We are not just trying to simply duplicate Stripe. Right away you knew. Now, unlike in the original Gremlins, which was fine for the time, where all of them were basically just clones of Gizmo, minus Stripe with his mohawk, the new Mogwai looked different. They all had unique features, and the Mogwais were also varying colors, not just the classic brown and white. I don't know, they had different patterns and everything else. And then Mohawk, of course, was black and white. And he appeared to have razor-sharp teeth from the get-go. Another thing I appreciate that they didn't try to just directly duplicate was the cocoons hatching. Now, in the original Gremlins, this was an intense moment. It was actually kind of scary. And again, they gave us something different. Once again, to let everyone know, hey, if you think this is just going to be a rehash of Stripe, think again. And all of a sudden, you saw this metal spiky mohawk come out of the cocoon, and oh my god. And another thing they did differently, which Don't know if it was entirely necessary. The Gremlins were in a huge building with a genetics lab, and so they had all kinds of elixirs, and a lot of the Gremlins, of course, being mischievous and always liking to fuck everything up and, you know, yum, yum, eating and drinking everything in their sight. They drank a lot of these elixirs, resulted in a bat gremlin, a smart gremlin that could talk like a human and very articulately, an electric gremlin, a vegetable gremlin, the girl gremlin, and then of course her mohawk became a spider gremlin. And to top that off, they combined a couple of them. The brain gremlin injected the bat gremlin with genetic sunblock, so for once we got to see a gremlin go out into the light, and that made for a very interesting scene. Now, here's where I think Gremlins 2 went wrong. In trying to be different, they went way over the top. The original Gremlins was a pleasant blend of scary and funny. Gremlins 2 decided, well, you know what, let's take one of these and roll with it. They took funny and just... Come on, what the fuck is that? Seriously, what the fuck? This movie already went to borderline and sometimes beyond slapsticky heights with all the fucking potions and all these different type gremlins and all this other shit, but damn, okay, the original Gremlins, there was the bar scene which was funny, there was Snow White and all that other stuff. It had its moments, but there was still a pleasant blend. I realize a lot of kids like this movie. I was a kid when I first saw both of them. But did you have to have so much attempt to make it funny? And did you have to completely distance yourself from the original? Oh, you know what? These are creatures that are supposed to be terrorizing everyone, but you know what? We don't want to make it too scary. Okay, it's like when you try to appeal to kids that damn much, like Gremlins 2 did, you get like a John Cena. And people fucking hate this bullshit. Oh my god. And it's one thing to throw this slapstickiness in there and try to be fucking funny, whether you hit or miss, but damn it, they kept ruining potentially great moments with their fucking attempts at humor. It was bullshit. That scene that I just showed you, that was the only gremlin outside of Mohawk. This was the only scene that had the potential to be scary. And they had, although it was kind of a neat death, which I'll get into that in a second here, the original Gremlins, when it comes to gremlin deaths, they set the bar early and they set the bar high. Even higher than the Bat Gremlin getting, Mr. Futterman finally getting revenge on the Gremlins for bulldozing through his house by dumping the Bat Gremlin in cement and then it flying up on top of the building and freezing into a statue, which was cool. But like I said, this was the only scene that had the potential and that was starting to be the least bit scary to remind us that the Gremlins are actually kind of a menace, not just a nuisance but an actual menace, and they fucked it up. And they did this a lot throughout the film. Like here, for example.
get the next one.
Ah, come on, what the fuck? Okay, I'm glad Phoebe Cates' character survived, because of course we want to see more of her, but it's a really hard pill to swallow to think she would survive a crash like that unless, okay, the gremlins broke her fall. Okay, we can suspend reality enough. After all, we're believing that there's fucking vegetable gremlins and a bat gremlin and all this other shit. But that was a scary moment. They even played the intense music. And they had to ruin it. We'll get the next one. And then they even do some fucking duck sound at the end. Hey, in case you don't think this is slapsticky. What the fuck was that fucking shit? There was a scene that followed that immediately that was kind of funny and intentionally. That one I agreed with though. Going back to the original Gremlins, the bar scene was so entertaining. I think a lot of us overlooked the fact that the character Kate, that was an extremely terrifying experience for her. These gremlins held her hostage. And now, years later, they hold her hostage in a fucking elevator. Such a vulnerable place of all things. And after all that's said and done, you remember the gremlin flashed her in the first Gremlins in the bar. And now, after all this, another gremlin decides to victimize her again in the same manner and flash her again. And finally, she just kicks the shit out of him and he goes flying. That was a great moment because Phoebe Cates' character deserved that moment. That was her way of saying, fuck you, gremlins. I'm not taking this shit anymore. Now, you want to talk about scary? I'm about to show you a scene from the original Gremlins. And might I add, because this part is cut out of this particular scene, I love it when a movie can mess with your head so much that they change the way you think and feel forever. Like with songs. For example, in 1998, Urban Legend made a powerful, touching love song called Turn Around. Scary. And anyone who grew up in the 80s will tell you. Sing to them a nice little Christmas song. Do you hear what I hear? Do you hear what I hear? I guarantee you, anyone who grew up in the 80s and saw Gremlins will have chills running up their fucking spine because that's the song that was playing right before this happened. You see that? That microwave death. That was not only a huge moment in the Gremlins saga, but it was a notorious moment in cinematic history. That scene is still talked about and even parodied today. It still makes people cringe thinking about it. Now another problem I have with Gremlins 2, I guess they made Mohawk a little too different from Stripe. I don't know if anyone noticed this. Stripe was the unquestioned leader of the Gremlins. He was the last surviving one, and he was smart. I mean, one Gremlin, while the sun was still out in the Peltzer house, one of them hid in the Christmas tree. Talk about another scary scene. The other three, so brashly, were out in the open in the kitchen. Stripe fucking hid. He hid inside. He actually hid inside something, and after the sun went down, then you see him pop the lid up and come out. He led the Gremlins. He was the unquestioned leader. Mohawk, on the other hand, seemed to have his own agenda. He seemed to be so content with torturing Gizmo. And that's what ultimately ended up causing his death. And he died way before a lot of other gremlins died. The gremlin who ended up drinking the brain serum ended up taking over as the leader. And aside from all of Mohawk's scary scenes, I mean, you know, it's, you know, like I said, I do appreciate them not just trying to clone Stripe and mimic him and trying to distance him from Stripe, but us Gremlins fans, not only did we come to know, but Gremlins 2 also teased it. When Mohawk first came out of that trash can as a Mogwai and the intense music that they played, we were led to believe that once again, okay, this is the leader. This is the one to fear. And yes, Mohawk was the only Gremlin in Gremlins 2 that ever was really terrifying. I mean, it was kind of a letdown that he was not made the leader. And then they even kind of fucked up his death. You had that intense scene where you think Kate and the other gal might die because they're caught in Mohawk's web, and then Mohawk's getting real close, and oh, it was real, real heart-pounding, edge-of-your-seat scene. And then Gizmo comes in, you know, playing Rambo, and he sets the motherfucker on fire, and then they even have that moment where everyone's watching Mohawk burn, and they're kind of looking at Gizmo, and they're, oh my God, you know, it's almost like this whole new chapter is being written. And Billy even says, oh, I guess they pushed Gizmo too far. And then they had to fucking parody, talk about your unnecessary comedy. Again, they had to parody a beautiful moment from the first Gremlins. Kate's Santa Claus story about how her dad broke his neck trying to come down the chimney and surprise them on Christmas. Abraham Lincoln gets mentioned out of nowhere, and then she starts going in this rant about this, oh no, don't mention Abraham Lincoln. Oh, there was a guy with a beard when I was a child, and he said, oh, hello, little girl. And they're like, okay, Kate, come on, come on, come on. What the fuck? Why? Why does Gremlins 2, why? It wasn't so much a sequel as a motherfucking parody of the first one. And that's why, once again, the 80s wins. Now, let's talk about the alleged trilogy in the making, Gremlins 3. All this time, here we are, 23 years since Gremlins 2, and nothing. All these rumors keep flying, and nothing. What the fuck, people? Is it coming or not? Make it. And when you do, make it right. Okay? Remember the rules of the trilogy. Anyone, including the main character, can die. This means you, Gizmo. And if I may go in a non-80s rant here for just a quick moment, look at Scream. Scream 1 was awesome. Scream 2, they even had the balls to kill off one of the most popular characters. And then Scream 3, there were 3 characters left. And I remember people telling me, okay, alright, Sydney's either got to be the killer or she's got to die. What's going to happen? And the 3 characters lived. What the fuck? And then, 10 years later, they decide to make a 4th. And the same 3 characters fucking live again. What the fuck? So, please, not only make Gremlins 3, but do it right. And since they've taken so fucking long, I'm going to spoil it right here. Because this is exactly what should happen, or it's fucking balls. Number 1, Gizmo has to become a gremlin. Alright, do the whole unsupervised thing again. There's no adults around, so after midnight, not only do the evil Mogwai eat, but they force feed Gizmo. And he becomes a gremlin. Write everything else in between, up until the end. Make it a beautiful moment to send the trilogy out and off into the sunset and tie it back to the first one. All the gremlins are dead except Gizmo. Gizmo, he has to sacrifice himself for the greater good. Because now, especially that he's a gremlin, 1 drop of water, and we don't even have to wait for anything to eat after midnight for the shit to hit the fan all over again. So Gizmo looks out at the sunlight, and then he looks at Billy and Kate. And right before he goes out, the last words we hear out of the entire Gremlins trilogy are, and that is the only way it can end. Might be kind of disturbing to hear that in a Gremlin voice, but still, poetic, beautiful, heartbreaking, the perfect ending. What the fuck? Sweet collector's item. Bonus. It's the book on record. What the fuck did I waste my time reading for?